Hello. Alright, so WIRBTA video. What I've really been thinking about, because the thing is, I like talking to you guys about these things, but over and over it's like, yeah, I'm pretty familiar with all these views on immigration, and YouTube is not part of activism where I'm trying to go out and make the world change its mind. That I do, but that's a different kind of project. I think the public debate is a different thing. And you know, I'm really evaluating taking part in conversations like that in the way you guys take part in them. If I was going to take it as an activism thing, I would be doing it very differently. And so perhaps I should, since I've been talking so long to you guys and to the publicly, pick up, if I'm going to, there's certain political issues that I could activate for that I think are close enough. And then there's ones that I think that are important enough that they should be acted on, even if it doesn't happen for centuries. Okay, so I'm about to get into those things, I guess, if I'm not careful. Um, the trend that I see in the world of free travel being easier and easier, both legally and economically for people. But that's not this. This is 5 issues. Okay, things I've really been thinking about. Okay, one is hard work. So I was born to a couple baby boomers that were 18 years old. One was a hippie, one was an artist. Um, and I find that the hippie attitude about hard work has taken over the whole world, and even the idea of what hard work is, um, that it's a good end in itself. When I was a young kid, I was wondering, well, wouldn't it? I don't understand why I can't close my eyes. I have a pretty good imagination, and just visualize anything perfectly clear. Sometimes I have them that clear, and they're very interesting, or like a lucid dream, so empowering. Why can't you just turn that on and off? Why do you have all these faculties in your brain? And I realized that for me, the answer is at least part. There is something beneficial about the hard work. Like if you want to have laser light shows, you have to build lasers. There's science and engineering. If you want to make an image out of oil paints, then there's a lot of sweat and time, and not hard work like you're always lifting heavy weights, but it takes diligence, and that it's not a necessary evil. It's more like people think that they own their body and forget that they are their body. And with image with art and work, that work is the art. It's not a necessary evil. If you can't just go poof and create the very same product and have it mean the same thing, right? So I've always been a hard worker on things, and always, by which I mean, projects. I liked writing, so I would write. I might work and just want to finish something. Or at one stage, I did a lot of architectural drawings when I was a kid, and I'd work really hard on those. And I'd have projects, or I'd try to make a game, or this project idea, and that's been in my career as well. However, I have often wondered, I don't. I've considered myself a hard worker, and my life shows a lot of hard work. Um, but, or I got an assignment one time when I was a kid, and I was up till like 11:30, and I think I must have been 13 or about 13. No, yeah, 12. And so I just stayed up doing it. I worked on that homework for like 6 hours that night. And then the next day, the teacher's like, oops, I meant every fourth one. On the other hand, I didn't have to do any homework for the rest of the week, so that worked out for me. And that's the way I think it should be. I don't think you should have to work hard and then not get a break. You should work hard and then get a break. Um, So, on the other hand, um, I'm not really sure. Would I be a hard worker if I hadn't pursued something that fascinates me? And if I won the lottery, I would still program, probably just as many hours a day. Um, I really, really enjoy it. I enjoy logical abstraction. I enjoy solving logical puzzles all the time, over and over and over, and they fit together and then they do things. I love that. So if it wasn't something like that, yeah, well, if I was paid well enough, then I could imagine, doing a job that was more distasteful, but only because I maybe wouldn't even have to do it full time. I wouldn't want to be in this threatened position where you're doing something shitty, and then the profit that's in it goes to someone else, and all that's very unmotivating. In which case, I'm not sure that you're almost in a position where you got to work hard on not working hard, and that would be the rational thing. So if somebody, isn't, working hard and they're focusing on not working hard, I actually respect that as potentially a kind of hard work. But what I don't like and why I've been thinking about this is how people will just tell you and da 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 da, and you should relax and you should do this and why don't we go do this and why not without that and or like guilt someone about not wanting to take a break and do something. Like it's perfectly okay. Well, guess what? It's hard to get motivated and you get a momentum of working, and people are always like, you should take a break right now. No, actually, it'll be harder. If I take a break right now, then I'll just have to do it later. Whereas if I finish, I could get all this stuff done, and then maybe, I get that week without homework. Well, I worked just hard enough to stop, and I was talking I went into Mr. Cropper's room, and there's another issue on here that was talked about in that room, but and I didn't really get them. They were acting like, they're talking about 60-hour work weeks. Um, I know lots of people that work 60-hour work weeks. I generally work 50 or 60-hour work week forever, going on no matter my whole career. And like the last 3 years, I've been working like 80-hour weeks. Probably on average, I've worked more than that. And not all of it paid, but all of it worked, not relaxing or getting to play a video game. And it feels good. I like that. Given some of the other things I've been thinking about how to deal with traumatic experiences and the things you've seen become your identity, which is good and or bad and or both. And you have to embrace that, but you also have to, you can't succumb to anything. I think that's not on my list of 5 right now, so I won't go any further on that tangent. But here's something I've really been thinking about a lot for months: how the lake was going to freeze. My guess was, well, like one night it'll freeze just a little bit, and then the snow will start falling on it. And in my head, somehow, it's like, oh, it'll thin crust all over. Now, because I've seen how it has started to happen, I realize that would never happen because the waves of the water would always break up weak ice and churn it, so you wouldn't have that. But even so, I would think, oh well, but there's ice there for it to fall on. Okay, no, what really happened is it got down to about freezing. We had our first snow, just like 2-3 inches, and some of it stuck on the lake. And I'm like, what the fuck? And it's just like, I guess crushed ice. It's like 4 acres of it just showed up in the morning after the snowfall. It's gotten a little bigger with the subsequent snowfall, and now it's starting to become ice. But it was just like crushed ice floating on a drink. So that was cool. And then today, which was a cool little present, was I saw the first bits of ice there was some ice growing off of where our dock normally goes. And then by a couple hours later, it had been washed away because the wind was up and the lake was, choppy. But I saw the most wonderful thing, just a big ice floe, just a big sheet of ice about a quarter of an acre or bigger, just floating along. And I realized that's what's going to happen. When the water's still and stuff and it gets cold, there's going to be ice form floating. And there's just going to be these things floating around. This is my new theory now. Floating around until they start to jam up, and then they just freeze together. And that's how it's going to be. It's all the different modes of water, different kinds of sprays, the big drops versus little drops, and aerosols, mists, and different kinds of waterfalls. You can have the ribbons and veils and all of these things, the different kinds of ice crystals you have, the different kinds of snow. It's just amazing how many different forms water can take and how wonderful all of them are. I really like living next to this lake. Nobody will ever drag me from this lake. Knock on wood. Or rather, I should say they'd have to drag me. Another thing I was thinking about is numerology, because I've been saying I'm 50 for 5 years, but now that I'm 49, I was realizing, no, I don't want to say I'm 50. That's 7 squared. I happen to have a system of numerology, not very systematized, but this comes from my childhood, where the numbers and letters all had personalities in my mind, and feelings and attitudes. Different kinds of personalities. Like in the alphabet, the further on you were in the alphabet, it gave letters a little more prestige. And the letter S was extremely like braggy and snobbish about it. Well, whereas the letter T, one notch further, was actually very cool about it. Didn't make a big deal about it. It was helpful to the other letters. So I also had those about numbers. Now 7 is a very interesting number. Like, it's a number that you could unlock a lock with, or make a lock with, or a lock that is a puzzle lock. So, and that number's squared. So that's pretty cool. That feels pretty good. It's just kind of all the numbers have personalities and maybe a certain amount of color and smell associated with them. Like the number 5 seems to me kind of agricultural. And then also just in mathematics, the patterns, the numbers you get, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and with 3s, you get a cyclic pattern. It looks like it's not going to come around, but then it comes around. All the digits add up to a number divisible by 3. And the numbers 2 is so symmetrical. It's like 2 and 4 and 6 and 8 and 2, 6 and 8 with a 1 in front of it. And it just goes on forever, and they're like a big gang. Like all the 2s are a big gang together. They're like the conformists, the mainstream, but they're not bad people. But, so 7's pretty good. 7 squared's good. Good number. I can't even describe the color. It's like an ultraviolet purple. Okay. Democratic leadership. I was thinking of putting this up front, burying the lead, they call it, except for, most people would want to hear just bullshit about, oh, Democrat, I heard about that. That's not really what I usually am thinking about, but here's what I have been thinking about: Democratic leadership. Fuck them. There's a good chance I'll never vote Democrat again. I voted for Hillary. That's it. Fuck them. Okay? All they've given us, they're only liberals about identity politics, and you really find out with emails and things, they're kind of racist too, but they don't want to legislate that. And they're probably more bigoted against poor people than they are against another rich person that happens to be Hispanic or whatever. Maybe they're just making some jokes. So, okay, maybe they really are liberal in that regard. But it's just, this identity politics where they think, we can run a woman. That's good enough. It's an identity. The people think good about their identity, and that's just a groupthinkism. Like I am the group that people categorize me in. No, that's just a category. It's criterion for the people putting the category out there so they can reason about it. Like, I'm sick. I need someone that would fit the category of a doctor. Perfectly legit. But if that's the only way you can think, or like they're doing that trial for that kid that shot up those African Americans in the church, he's like, I have to do this because black people are killing people in the street. Not those ones you killed weren't. Those individuals weren't out killing people in the street. That group thinking, both sides, where people say, yeah, I'm part of a group. How does the group think? That's what I want to think. I get my faith from the group. I don't like that. I don't like it from the outside. This Democratic leadership, fuck them. And Howard Dean's on TV going, well, Nancy Pelosi, she raised a lot of money for people. Of course she's going to win. They've lost their 70 seats or whatever it is since she's been around. It's like, excuse me, you're not doing it. If you were a statesman, you would step down because it's not working. You would figure out that it might be a good job for you, but it's not working unless you don't really care about it. Basically, both parties, the real party is whatever the rich have decided in their conferences and in their cocktail parties and in the industry newsletters they read. Those are the opinions that are being put down on both parties. And insofar as the Democrats have taken the liberal side, they have to do something that'll pander to a certain kind of working class, and the conservatives have to do things to pander to a different kind of working class. And in the case of the Democrats, all they've done is chosen identity politics. When it comes to war, fuck you, we're still sending you off to war. When it comes to torture, fuck you, you are a torturer. You don't get to be in a free nation that treats other people well. Torture's fine. You know, World War II, when we were known for for not torturing and treating prisoners well, and so the Germans were fucking going out of their way to surrender to us so they didn't have to surrender to the Russians. That's gone. That's gone. You know? So I would like that back, and the Democratic Party isn't going to give that back to us. And Pelosi's still leader. And Schumer. And I saw somebody going, yeah, but if the party's so weak, Democrats, wouldn't it be easier to take it over? No, because it's run by money, and you can't control that money. It's not controlled by winning because they're weak in that they can't win elections. They're not weak in terms of the buddies giving them money, keeping them in the position. The people giving them the money, they don't really care and would often prefer. They're just giving the money as a backup plan to those guys. So fuck it. New party. Could go back to the Whigs. We can have the edutainment party. We can have, I would like to have the information party. I saw a party called the edification party. I personally think all parties are corrupt, but in our system, you need to, because that is the organization that's going to get you on the ballot in all those states. So you'd have a lightweight party that was its purpose, not controlling people. And I wouldn't even want to have a party platform about end positions. I would like to have a party where, hey, you might have pro-life and pro-choice people in it. But there would be the information party. It's like, okay, well, our agreement is that whenever we have one of these disagreements, we get as much as the facts as we can out, and when it comes to public policy, we have to rely with a pragmatic result, right? You can't have old people dying in the street because of some principle of, well, that's just how it has to be, evidently. It's immoral to make people share or whatever. Like, no, there will be a goal-oriented getting information back and principles leading through to why you have the goals that you have in the first place. So, Democratic leadership, the Democrats are idiots. And then the final thing is logic education. Nobody's into logic education. I've asked many millions of people, it seems like, and I was talking to Mr. Cropper about the logic education. I'm like, why don't we start teaching kids logic? And everybody, and they did it, and actually, he said was like, not Cropper, but somebody else, like, that's like teaching them quantum mechanics. I'm sorry, teaching syllogisms is not quantum mechanics. And then it's like Mr. Cropper, who's the teacher, he's like, what's a syllogism? But he'd had a few to drink. He might remember what a syllogism is right now. But, it's a little three-step argument that is the basis of first order logic, arguably all logic, in that it's a little key. And the fact that people think this kind of stuff is like quantum mechanics and for post-college graduates, when in reality we're talking about logical reasoning. And everybody on this YouTube's is all like, they think they're logical. Like, I don't believe in God, therefore I must be logical. And Cropper's going like, well, you don't need to be learning logic in school. You just learn that from your life and from history, from learning lessons of history, which is the logic of geopolitics and might makes right. So no, I don't think so. And we see everybody making fallacies, and everybody on YouTube complains about all the other people making fallacies and being illogical. And then, but all of you seems, I haven't found the one that's like, let's actually teach logic to kids. I mean, we teach math way younger than I think we need to. We could just be teaching them logic and reasonable things like people don't like it when you hit them. Johnny hit the people in his class, therefore they didn't like him. I mean, these are straightforward how things go together, and then later on, and in college you can teach, second order logical fallacies and probabilistic logic, modal sub-brain compatible, the fancier things, but just the basic idea of logic and the structure of certain fallacies. And I think so all the more because of the reaction of people, even people that say they're the most logical and objective. It's like, oh, but don't teach people that. I mean, they're afraid to find out how little they actually, not only how little they know, but how much they violate the rules they ought to know when pretending to be logical. And it's not like you have to be logical all the time. I mean, I do believe there's always a logic, right? Because a logic in general is not valid logic per se. It's just actual logic, like the way one idea gets turned into another. Information processing. There could be bugs in your logic. So we're talking about teaching kids logic. We're really talking about teaching kids how to debug their logic, how to take out the known sources of error and the kinds of error that we could take out, just like we could take things out of a calculation. In people's real life, a lot of times they use approximation techniques to figure out a number. Oh, it's about this, and I multiply that always by 10. It should be 10.2, and then I do this, and then I get an approximation. Useful, but sometimes you want to get all those errors, the noise that built up, or your approximation is getting systematically biased one way, and you could use math to get rid of that. You can use logic to get rid of that from your logical arguments. And people aren't for learning that. Anyway, all right, derp. That was one of the comments in the comment thing I was just reading. Unspeakable is lolly lalu. Derp. All right. Anyway, have a good weekend, people of Earth, and any other planets that are receiving this transmission.